Hello, Alistair. Thank you very much for joining me today. I just wanted to have a chat with you just to find out some of your experiences as a deaf person. I suppose my first question is, do you consider yourself a deaf person?
Yeah, I do. I've always considered myself as a deaf person. I mean, I may not be profoundly deaf, but had an impact on every aspect of my life. Family, friendship, socially, professionally. Yeah, I do consider myself as a deaf person, and I'm comfortable with it.
Excellent. Tell me about your experience growing up as a deaf person within a family. Were your family deaf or hearing?
My mum and dad are both hearing. I have an older sister who is deaf, and myself deaf. So I would say I'm quite lucky really that me and my sister were deaf. But that's it. I've got no other brothers and sisters. So that was a positive thing because we had each other, especially for communication. And I think having a deaf sister helped me with my friendship with other people as well as with my education. So I was lucky to have a deaf sister.
Do your family use sign language at all?
No, we don't forget, we are talking about the 1970s. So the 1970s was not a time where you used sign language or any other form of communication apart from lip reading. That was the only way that was it, lip reading. Mm-hmm. But, of course, with gestures. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, the reality is there was a lot of gesturing going on with me and my sister, as well as at school, and as well as with other people I met, other deaf people I met. So, yeah, there was that going on, which is our form of communication, but basically sign language, not really. But don't forget, it is the 1970s, and that was when everybody used the oral method.
So, with lip reading, how easy or difficult would you say that is?
Well, it depends on you just talk about it depends on the person. But for me, I'm quite good at it. But I couldn't rely on it completely, because if you try to lip read somebody who doesn't use any facial clues or body language clues or gesturing or even a bit of signing to put what they're saying, it's actually quite difficult. I think lip reading is actually quite difficult when you look at it completely on its own. There have to be other factors that make lip reading easier to follow. So it can be difficult, it can be easy. It depends on how you use other supporting factors.
Mm-hmm. So like the actual situation, the context,
yeah, context is crucial. And where you are, but context is... You've got to use a bit of... you've got to have knowledge of the subject to be able to lip read. You can't lip read something you don't know anything about.
Yes.
So you have to... It's all about anticipation. Mm-hmm. You're guessing. You're not guessing, and you're second guessing what's going to be said. Mm-hmm. So it's all about anticipation. It comes with experience, it comes with knowledge of the subject. That makes you a better lip reader.
Okay. So going back to growing up in a hearing family, we've talked about communication. Do you have any other brothers and sisters at all? And how did you communicate with them?
Well, I only have a sister.
Oh, just the one sister?
Just one sister, and she's deaf.
Oh, right, okay. Is that something that's hereditary, or...?
Yeah, obviously, yeah. It is hereditary. But even though it's called a recessive gene, basically, it doesn't mean that... It's not one of those where every generation is deaf. It's a recessive gene where... I don't really understand the gene side of it, but it will crop up in certain generations.
All right. So, in terms of your experiences, let's maybe move on to education. So, as a deaf person growing up, what type of school did you go to?
I've been taught after school, actually. When when I first went to school at primary, I went to a unit. This is where you go to a hearing school and you've got a deaf unit.
Okay.
Then I went completely mainstream, being the only deaf child in a school, in a hearing school. And then I went to a deaf school. So I've experienced all three. So I've had a taste of all three. That's generally what's on offer to deaf children, and still I think applies today.
So looking back, which would you say was more beneficial to you as a deaf person?
Well, for me, it was the deaf school, by far, for me.
And why?
I think the biggest factor was two factors: small classes, peer support. I think that's probably a bigger factor, peer support. I think being able to learn from each other was a big factor. And I suppose I was happier. But I was happier in the other types of education I've had as well. But I think it was a smaller classes and peer support.
And what language do you use at school?
English.
All right. And what about in the deaf school?
English.
All right. So were there other children who signed?
They probably did. I mean, there were deaf children of deaf parents. Who were probably using sign language at home, but they were all using English when they came to my school.
Okay. When you say a deaf person using English, what do you mean by that? Is that through spoken or written or both?
Both. I mean, there would probably be element of sign-supported English, which is basically signing to support what's being said, but there wasn't any BSL. It was there, but it wasn't high profile. It was certainly very low profile.
So when you say it was low profile, where and when would children use sign language?
Socially, at break time. Okay. You know, it'd be socially. You have to remember that now I'm talking about the 1980s. Sign language is still very much a hidden language. Very little was known about it. Certainly in the main, we didn't have, it just wasn't visible. So even at a deaf school, it was still fairly kept under wraps. I didn't really see a lot of it, despite the fact, yes, some people, it probably was their first language, it was not clearly visible. If you did see any signing, it would be very much more gesturing or sign-supported English. BSL wasn't really visible.
In education, you